Hi guys, today I'm going to show you just kind of a basic run through on how to use Pixlr, which is going to be the photo editing software that we use in this class. Um, it's Pixlr.com, Pixlr.com. This is basically like an online based Photoshop. It doesn't have all of the stuff that Photoshop has, but it has everything that we will need for the purpose of this class. Um, so I am going to, so you're going to go to Pixlr.com and you're going to do advanced Pixlr. Playful Pixlr is fine, I guess, but it doesn't give us all the tools that we need. And so you're going to go to advanced Pixlr E. And then it's pulling up all this stuff up for me, and I don't really need it to. You guys will be doing things like create new or open image. Um, these are the pictures that I've used. They're on my computer, and that's what it's kind of pulling from. So, like, if I have a whole bunch of computers on my a whole bunch of images on my computer that I want to open up, I can click open image and it'll let me pick a picture from here. And I don't think that what's this? This is great. So you can find a whole bunch of pictures in here. I just kind of found one, and you want it to be max. And this is because you're more than likely going to want to print these out. If you really are just going to put it on the web, just click web. Like if you know for a fact that you're never going to print this out, you're just turning this into me, that's it, fine, click web. If you know that you want to print it out, make sure that you're clicking max. And we're going to apply and see what happens. So this is a stock image that I bought quite a few years ago that I just kind of use because it's really simple and it's easy to kind of show students how to do things. So now you have an image in here. These are all the tools you have to use on this image. So you have, this is the arrange tool. This is if you had multiple different images on here and you wanted to move those images into different places. This is the select tool. So you can select certain parts of the picture to do different things to. So I can do a whole bunch of different stuff to this area of this picture. If you don't want it to select anymore, you can go to select and then deselect or control D, either way. This is called the lasso tool. It is also a select tool, but rather than being a shape, you get to use it to kind of draw. These work much better if you are using a mouse pad rather than the trackpad on your computer. You can see that even for me, someone who's been doing Photoshop stuff for years, like that was really difficult. And it's because I'm using my trackpad rather than a mouse. So if I don't want this, I can just do Control D for deselect. We also have this, it's a polygon run one, and this one like allows you to do more angled selections. This one's called a Bezier, and this is so you can like curve out what it is that you're trying to select. And then this one's called the magnetic one, and what this does, this is one of my favorites. If it'll select, I will tell you that these can be a little glitchy online um, because they're using so much internet to do this. So it can be a little glitchy. So just so you guys know, if we were in school, it wouldn't be so bad. Um, but because we're at home, it can be kind of difficult. So the magnetic one's great because what it does is it starts to look for similar colors or similar oops, I just messed up. As you can see, this still works better if you have a mouse rather than your trackpad. So this works really good because it allows you to, it'll look for different, like what's called contrast, light and darkness, and it'll pick things based on that. So like, um, it makes picking things like this blue would be really easy to pick because it's so different than that green. Um, so Control D means you can unselect it. So these I'm going through right now that there's three different select tools. This one, this is a select tool, and this is also a select tool. It's called a wand select. And what the wand select does is it picks pixels and it sees that, okay, every pixel near this is all the same tone. It's all the same lightness or darkness. And so more than likely, that's what you're wanting me to do. Now, the reason that we select things is that when I show you how to do different tools on here, say you want this part of this to be a more orange color, you can do that. So it allows you to change specific things about specific areas. That's what the select tool does. It also allows you to cut things out. So if I wanted that to be cut out, I could just do Control C. I'm sorry, Control X. That would be cutting it out. And it now you can see it's a black hole. So you can actually cut things out using these select tools. So I'm going to do Control Z to bring it back because that's an undo tool. There we go. This is a crop tool that allows you to crop your image to whatever size you want. This is a cutout mask. It's something that like you can play around with, but I can tell you that it's not something you're going to use for a while. It's really, really, really good if you're trying to do weird collagey stuff because it allows you to just like to basically draw on here and cut things out as you do it. So if I had two images on here, it would, here we go, draw mask. If I had two images on here, see, it just took out that background. Anyway, if I had two images, one on top of the other, I could use this to like have some of the background image showing and have some of the foreground image showing. And I'll show you guys how to do that more later. This tool right here is liquefied. Don't use it. It's cheap. I'm just not going to show you what it does. It's gross. This is a heal tool. You can use this in a lot of different ways, but what it's really, really good at is if your camera had little like dust particles in it, which your cameras often do, because that's how dust works. It allows you to um, take those dust particles out. This is a clone tool. This can be useful again if you're doing that kind of like collagey kind of stuff with your photographs, but really it's not useful unless you're doing that. Um, this is a blur tool. This is a really great tool if like say you took a picture of someone's face and then something in the background is really um, distracting, you can blur that out with this tool. Um, the dodge and burn tool, you guys probably won't use this. This comes from old darkroom photography and it has to do with lightening and darkening certain areas of pictures in order to bring the emphasis out. Most cameras today don't really need that because you guys aren't having to pick your shutter speed and all that kind of stuff. So this doesn't really make a lot of sense. This is like liquefied. Don't use it. It's really cheap and ugly, and it doesn't work really well. Um, in here, they have things like pen tools and brush tools, erase tools, color replace tools. There's all these tools in here. They're good rate for graphic design, but if you're looking to graphic design, go to Sketchpad. Don't do it in Pixlr. Pixlr is really great for photo stuff. It's not great for graphic design. When I've used it for that kind of graphic design stuff, it looks kind of cheap. Try it out, see if you like it, see if you can make it look good. I never have now found it to look really great. Um, yeah, so I'm not going to really show you any of this stuff because this is much more for graphic design stuff that you can do in Sketchpad. If you're not finding Sketchpad and you don't like it very much and you want to try out Pixlr, go ahead and use these and try them out. I personally don't like them in here. That's all. So these up here, file is where you can save it, print it, open anything you've saved. You can edit is where you can um, mess around with like distorting your image, which you don't really need to do. You don't really need to transform your image. You don't need to do really anything under edit. Image is messing around with image size. You don't really need to know anything about that. Layer is cool because layer you can actually, like I was saying before, you can have pictures on top of pictures and start doing like stuff so that you're cutting the pictures out on top of each other and making like dual image collage looking stuff. And so this is where you do that. And so you can put a new layer, which means you're putting a new image on top. You can duplicate the same layer that you're working on. You can add an image as a layer, which means you'll bring another photograph on top of this. You can, yeah, that's all you really need to know in here. Select, I already showed you how to do that with the tools. This is what kids want. When kids say that they want to learn photography and they want to use these photo apps, this is what they want. They want to know how to adjust their image. So auto adjust is fine. Like if you bring a picture in and you're like, this almost looks right, but I can't figure out what's wrong with it, click auto adjust. All photographers do it. We all hit auto adjust to see if we like it. And then if we don't, we hit Control Z and we go and adjust it ourselves. Brightness and contrast is what makes the picture darker or lighter. So I'm going to bring this over here so you can see. So brightness can make this thing look really, really bright, or I can make it really, really dark. But you can see the brightness and darkness is it's a very heavy tool. It's not delicate at all. Contrast is what makes certain areas, so this is making the really bright areas even brighter and the darker areas even darker. This is now making the flattening everything out so that everything becomes gray. So contrast has to do with the dark areas and the light areas. The more contrast you have, the darker your dark areas are and the brighter your bright areas are. Um, Adjustments, temperature and tint. You guys won't use this very much. Our pictures, 99% of the time, our cameras are fixing this for us. But sometimes you take a picture outside and everything looks really blue and you don't like that, so you'll fix it here by going a little more yellow. And sometimes you take a picture outside and for some reason everything turns really, really magenta, so you'll make it more green. So if you look at the picture and it feels too blue or too yellow, you fix it in temperature, or if it looks too magenta, kind of purpley or too green, you fix it down here. If you are interested in messing around with this, like say this image, like to me, this image is super what's called saturated. The colors are like intense, very vibrant colors. So you can play with the saturation and I can actually take this down so that it doesn't look so intensely colorful. I can actually turn it all the way into a black and white picture if I want to. Um, Hue shifts the just kind of like the color thing. So say this looked way too yellow to me, which it does, I can actually kind of make it a little bit more blue. Or I can get really crazy and I can make it all the way up here into really, really purple. So it's like putting a filter on your camera so that the colors look very different when you take the photos. So this is kind of fun if you're doing kind of uh, like if I change, watch this. If I go to saturation, take that way down, and I change the hue, let's bring the saturation up just a little bit. It can actually start to kind of like, you can make really interesting images this way. Um, Lightness, not so great, but like that one's always fun for me to play with if you're trying to get a certain emotion or feeling across. Um, Vibrance, this just has to do with how like much the picture pops, and I don't exactly know what it does to the picture, so I don't ever use it. It's never been explained to me what vibrance does. Color balance, this is really, really great if you've taken a picture and it just looks a little off and you're going, I don't know why. So if it looks too red, you can make it less red, or if it looks too which will make it more cyan, by the way, more a little more blue greenish. Green will be either more green or more magenta. Blue will be more blue or more yellow. But this is a kind of fun thing to play with. Um, Color lookup, don't bother. Highlights and shadows, don't bother. It's great to play. It's like if you know what you're doing, like I feel like the highlights in this are just so intense, so I'm bringing them down. But um, and I'm going to open up the shadows just a little bit. But I know how to do this. I've done this for years, so I know how to look at a picture and say like, yeah, those highlights are too much. So I know how to mess around with this so that it looks the way I want it to look. And this button here allows me to see what it looks like before and after. Um, Exposure. This is a kind of like brightness and contrast. It allows you to make it lighter or darker. This curves, this is the stuff right here. I love curves. So curves is where you can actually control your image a ton. So if you put little stops, it says double click to add or remove a control point. So if you put little control points on here, I put a control point on these here. And that way I can actually then make my darks a little darker and I can choose what they're going to look like, or I can make them a little bit brighter. I can choose to then just focus on my midtones. If my dark and light looks really good, but I just don't like my midtones, I can mess with that. Um, you can also then in here also red, yellow, and blue is something you can mess around with. So like say your shadows look really good with reds, but your highlights don't. You can come in here and mess around with this. But you can also do things like this with it. You can start to kind of actually like really mess around with the way that you want your image to look. So you can give it this kind of sci-fi feeling with this as well. So curves is like really the way you control your image. That's how you would do it. Professional photographers do it all the time. Um, Desaturate, this is how you turn your image into a black and white image. Don't use the other tool to do that. Use this because it does it correctly. If you don't like it, hit Control Z and it'll bring it back. Um, Threshold, posterize, don't really worry about that stuff. Filters, you can use these. They're not the same filters like you see on TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram. They're totally different, and they're not as good. You're using the adjustments to make your own filters. That's what you're doing. And view is how you can zoom in and get bigger and stuff like that. So this is everything that you just like basics what you need to know for Pixlr. There's a lot more that you'll learn through other videos. So this is the beginning. Come in, mess around with it, and have some fun.